In this video, I'd like to touch on the idea of imaginary or complex numbers. We won't do a whole lot with imaginary numbers in this course, but I'd like for you to see them, and I'd like for you to get a general idea of how these things are used in real world situations. Because make no mistake, in spite of their rather unfortunate name, imaginary numbers are used in very non-imaginary situations. So the product of two positive numbers is positive. And the product of two negative numbers is also positive. And the product of 0 with itself is 0. So if you take any number and multiply it by itself, the result is greater than or equal to 0. But sometimes we're going to need to take the square root of a negative number. For example, the square root of -1. And according to what I've said up here, the square root of -1 can't be positive. It can't be negative. It can't be 0. That doesn't seem to leave us a whole lot of options. And in fact, what we have to do is create an entire new number, one that is not positive, not negative, and not 0, to serve as this square root. That number is denoted I, and it is given the somewhat unfortunate name of the imaginary unit. But in spite of its name, the imaginary unit shows up in non-imaginary applications. It gets used in electrical circuits. If you're looking at the position of a weight attached to a spring bouncing up and down, that's very much a real situation, but we use the imaginary unit to study it. So this is I. I is a number such that I squared is -1. What if we want to take the square root of some number that isn't -1, but is negative, maybe the square root of -5? Well, we can take the square root of any negative number, not just -1, if we remember first that you can think of a negative number as -1 times a positive number. Second, the square root of a product is the product of the square roots. The square root of -1 is I. So this is the imaginary unit I times the square root of 5. And in terms of this class, this is really the only algebraic skill we need. We need to be able to take the square root of a negative number and rewrite it as the imaginary unit times the square root of a positive number.